The cardiac monitor was not beeping. It was screaming. A singular, high-pitched tone that announced the end of a life. Inside Operating Theater 1 at the Zenith Institute in Chicago, the air was freezing, yet sweat ran down the back of Dr. Sterling Thorne's neck. Thorne was not just a surgeon. He was a brand, the medical director of the most advanced biotech hospital in the Western Hemisphere, and the man currently poised to become the president's personal physician. But right now, he was the man presiding over the death of a legend. Time of death, Thorne muttered, stripping off his blood-slicked gloves. He looked at the clock on the wall. 2:14 hours. Sir, wait! A young resident stammered, staring at the EKG. I saw a flutter. It's an electrical artifact, you idiot. The heart has stopped, Thorne snapped. He looked down at the patient. Major Kalen Vance, call sign Reaper, the commander of the Ghost Reconnaissance Group. A man rumored to have survived a sniper bullet to the chest in Damascus and a 3-day interrogation in a black site. But he hadn't survived Thorne's operating table. Cover him, Thorne ordered, and get legal on the phone. We need to frame this as a pre-existing condition. The toxins from his last deployment. That's the narrative. Thorne reached out to pull the sheet over the major's face. Suddenly, the corpse's hand shot up. It was a movement of pure, primal violence. Kalen Vance's hand, scarred and calloused, clamped onto Thorne's wrist. The grip was crushing. Bones ground against bones. Thorne let out a strangled yelp, his knees buckling as the dead man pulled him down until their faces were inches apart. The room froze. The nurses gasped. The armed military guards by the door unholstered their weapons but hesitated. Kalen's eyes opened. They were bloodshot, terrifying voids of pain, but the intelligence behind them was razor-sharp. He wasn't breathing, his heart wasn't beating properly, but sheer willpower was keeping his synapses firing. You! Kalen rasped. The sound was like grinding glass. Major, let go. You are in shock. Thorne shrieked, trying to pry the fingers loose. Kalen pulled harder, dragging the surgeon's ear to his lips. Get her, Kalen whispered. Who? Who do you want? Thorne cried. The one you threw out like trash, Kalen hissed, his voice gaining a terrifying resonance. Get me the medic from the lobby, or I will take you to hell with me. 6 months earlier, the Zenith Institute was a monument to ego. Glass, marble, and polished steel, it looked more like a tech billionaire's headquarters than a hospital. It was designed to attract donors, politicians, and the elite. Elena Rossi hated it. At 43, Elena was the oldest trauma nurse on the floor. She had messy hair, scrubs that were practical rather than fitted, and a walk that suggested she had marched over terrain much rougher than linoleum. She had spent 15 years as a combat medic with the Rangers before retiring to civilian life. Hoping for quiet, she found politics instead. Nurse Rossi, the receptionist hissed, waving her over. Security is busy with the senator's arrival. You need to handle the disturbance in the atrium. Elena looked over the reception desk. In the center of the gleaming white lobby, near the grand piano, a man was curled up on a velvet bench. He was filthy. His army jacket was torn, his boots held together with duct tape. He was shaking violently. Elena didn't see a disturbance. She saw a symptom. She grabbed her kit and vaulted over the low partition, ignoring the receptionist's gasp. She slid across the polished floor to the man's side. He was young, maybe 25, but his eyes were ancient. Hey, easy soldier, Elena said softly, checking his pulse. It was racing, erratic. I'm Elena. Can you hear me? Can't breathe. The man choked out. Bees. Inside. He clawed at his throat. His lips were turning blue. Elena recognized the signs instantly. Not an overdose, as the security guards often assumed, but severe anaphylaxis. His airway was closing. Code Blue, lobby. Elena shouted, her voice carrying the command authority of a sergeant major. I need an EpiPen and a crash cart now. Keep your voice down. The voice didn't come from a medic. It came from Dr. Sterling Thorne. He was walking through the lobby with a group of wealthy donors, explaining the architectural significance of the skylight. Thorne stepped over, looking at the dying veteran with a sneer of disgust. Nurse Rossi, this man is clearly overdosing. Security is on the way to remove him. Do not make a scene in front of the board. He's not high, he's dying, Elena snapped, ripping open the man's jacket to find his dog tags. Sergeant Miller, allergic to penicillin/B venom. He's in anaphylactic shock. I need epinephrine. You are not a doctor, Thorne said coldly, smoothing his Italian suit. And I did not authorize treatment. Wait for security. The boy on the bench arched his back, a silent scream leaving his mouth as his windpipe sealed shut. He doesn't have time for security, Elena growled. If you touch him, you are liable, Thorne warned, stepping between her and the medical station. I am giving you a direct order. Stand down. Elena looked at Thorne. Then she looked at the kid, a boy who had probably cleared IEDs in the desert while Thorne was sipping espresso in med school. Screw your order, Elena said. She didn't run to the medical station. She knew Thorne had locked the drug dispensers with his biometrics. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her trauma shears. She grabbed the boy's tactical pen from his pocket, a sturdy, metal instrument. Don't do it, Thorne gasped, realizing what she was planning. Elena ignored him. She palpated the boy's throat, finding the cricothyroid membrane. With a steady hand, she unscrewed the pen casing, sterilized the tip with an alcohol wipe from her pocket, and drove the hollow tube into the boy's throat. Blood spurted onto the white marble floor. The donors screamed. Thorne looked like he was going to faint, but then a hiss of air. The boy's chest heaved. The blue tint began to fade from his lips. He sucked in a greedy, ragged breath through the makeshift airway. Elena stabilized the tube, her hands covered in blood. She looked up, straight into Thorne's eyes. He's breathing, she said. Thorne didn't look at the patient. He looked at the horrified donors, then at the bloodstain on his pristine lobby floor. You're fired, Thorne whispered, his face trembling with rage. You performed an invasive surgical procedure without a license, in a non-sterile environment, against a direct order from the medical director. I saved his life, Elena said, standing up as the paramedics finally rushed in. You assaulted a civilian and traumatized my guests, Thorne hissed. Get out. I'll see to it your license is revoked before you reach the parking lot. Elena wiped her hands on her scrubs. She looked at the young soldier, who was now being loaded onto a gurney, alive. She unpinned her ID badge and dropped it into Thorne's expensive latte, splashing foam onto his suit. You're a small man in a big coat, Sterling, she said quietly. Someday someone's going to come through those doors that your money can't fix. And I hope to God I'm miles away. Present day, 6 months later. Elena Rossi was not miles away. She was 3 miles downriver, in the industrial district, wrapping the knuckles of a heavyweight boxer named Tank. Since the blacklisting, no hospital would touch her. Thorne had been thorough. He had painted her as unstable, a cowboy nurse with a drug problem. So Elena did what she had to do. She worked at the Iron Works, a grimy boxing gym that doubled as an underground fighting ring at night. She stitched cuts, popped dislocated shoulders back into place, and diagnosed concussions for cash under the table. You got a good right hook, Tank? Elena muttered, taping his hand. But drop your guard again, and you'll be eating through a straw. You're a hard woman, Elle. The giant boxer grinned. You should be running a trauma unit, not wiping my sweat. Trauma units have too much politics, Elena said, taking a swig of lukewarm water. Here, at least the blood is honest. The gym door banged open. The sound wasn't the usual squeak of the hinges. It was the crash of a breach. Elena didn't flinch. She kept taping. We're closed, boys. Come back at. She stopped. Standing in the doorway were 4 men. They weren't cops and they weren't local thugs. They were clad in matte black tactical gear, rain dripping off their Kevlar vests. They held automatic rifles at the low ready. The leader, a man built like a vending machine with a scar running through his eyebrow, stepped forward. This was Sergeant Major Jax Brick O'Connell. "Clear the room," Jax barked. "Everyone out except the medic." The boxers scattered. Tank hesitated, looking at Elena. "It's okay, Tank," Elena said, standing up slowly. She wiped her hands on a rag. "I assume you boys aren't here for a tetanus shot." Jax walked up to her. He towered over her, but Elena held his gaze. She smelled ozone, wet pavement, and high-grade gun oil. "You Elena Rossi?" Jax asked. "Depends who's asking. If it's the licensing board, I'm just a spectator." "I'm Sergeant Major O'Connell, Unit 7. I'm here for my CO." "Let me guess." Elena crossed her arms. "Your CO got into a bar fight, and you can't go to a hospital because it's off the books." "Our CO is dying at the Zenith Institute," Jax said, his voice cracking slightly. "And he's refusing to let the doctors touch him. He asked for you." Elena laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "Zenith? Dr. Thorne's palace? Sorry, Sergeant. I'm barred from the premises. If I set foot there, I go to jail." "Ma'am!" Jax stepped closer. He pulled a tablet from his vest and showed her a live feed. It was a chaotic scene inside an operating room. A man lay on the table, surrounded by panicked staff. Even through the grainy video, Elena could see the mottling on his skin, the rigidity of his muscles. "Major Kalen Vance," Jax said. "He collapsed 4 hours ago. Thorne says it's heart failure. But the Major, before he went under, he said Thorne is lying." Elena squinted at the screen. She saw the EKG reading. "That's not heart failure," she murmured. "Look at the P-wave. It's inverted. And look at his neck veins. They're distended, but his pressure is low." She looked up at Jax. "Is he on any experimental meds?" "Classified." "He's dying, Sergeant," Elena shouted. "Classification doesn't matter to a corpse." "Was he part of the Chimera protocol?" Jax's eyes widened. "How do you know about Chimera?" "I served in the Rangers, kid. I know what they give Spec Ops guys to keep them awake for 72 hours. If Thorne gave him a standard sedative while he had Chimera in his system, it creates a binary neurotoxin," Jax finished, his face paling. "It turns his blood into cement. Thorne is treating him for a heart attack." Elena realized, horror dawning on her. "He's probably pushing anticoagulants. If he does that, he'll bleed out internally in 10 minutes, Elena finished. She grabbed her battered medical bag from under the bench. "I need a ride." Jax pointed to the back door. "We parked the bird in the alley." "You landed a helicopter in an alley?" "Ma'am, for the Major, we'd land a spaceship on the White House lawn. Let's move." The flight took 4 minutes. The Black Hawk helicopter didn't ask for landing clearance. It simply dominated the airspace, forcing a news chopper to veer off. They touched down on the Zenith Institute's rooftop helipad in a hurricane of wind and rain. Dr. Sterling Thorne was waiting by the access doors, flanked by 2 hospital security guards. He looked wet, miserable, and furious. As Elena jumped out of the chopper, hair whipping across her face, Thorne lunged forward. "This is insanity!" Thorne screamed over the rotor wash. "She is a civilian. She has no privileges here. Arrest her." Jax stepped between them. He didn't raise his voice. He just placed a hand on his sidearm. "Dr. Thorne, under Article 9 of the Emergency Powers Act regarding high-value military assets, I am designating Nurse Rossi as the acting primary medical officer." "You are relieved." "You can't do that." Thorne sputtered, his face turning purple. "I am the medical director. This is my hospital." Elena walked right up to Thorne. She was 6 inches shorter than him, but in that moment, she looked 10 feet tall. "Get out of my way, Sterling," she said calmly, "or I'll intubate you with a tire iron." She pushed past him, the doors swinging open as Jax and his team flanked her like a phalanx. They burst into Trauma Room 1. It was a disaster zone. Debris on the floor, alarms blaring, nurses crying. Elena didn't pause. She walked straight to the table. Major Kalen Vance looked worse than on the screen. His skin was gray, sweat pooling in his clavicles. He was convulsing rhythmically. Status, Elena barked. A terrified resident looked up. BP 60 over 40. O2 sat is 82%. We're pushing heparin and preparing for bypass. Stop the heparin, Elena shouted. Flush the line. Saline, wide open. Now. But Dr. Thorne said. Dr. Thorne is an idiot who is trying to kill him. Elena grabbed the resident's shoulder. Look at his pupils. Pinpoint. Look at the rash on his chest. It's not a heart attack. It's a reaction to the inhibitor. Elena grabbed a syringe. I need atropine and pralidoxime. High dose. And get me a dialysis machine. Thorne burst into the room. Security. Stop her. She's administering unauthorized drugs. She's going to kill him. If you don't shut up. Kalen Vance suddenly gasped from the table, his eyes flying open. My men will remove your tongue. Kalen looked at Elena. Even through the agony, a flicker of recognition passed between them. A shared understanding of the battlefield. You came, he rasped. I don't leave soldiers behind, Elena said, injecting the atropine directly into his central line. Hold on, Major. This is going to feel like getting kicked by a mule. The monitor flatlined. We lost him, the resident screamed. Thorne smirked. Cold, predatory smile. I told you. Malpractice. She killed him. Arrest her. The hospital security guards moved forward. Handcuffs out. Wait, Elena said. She didn't look at the guards. She kept her fingers on Kalen's carotid artery. Come on. Come on. She knew the chemistry. The atropine would stop the heart for a few seconds to reset the electrical rhythm, overriding the toxin's paralysis. It was a hard reset. 1 second. 2 seconds. 10 seconds. He's dead, Elena, Thorne said, his voice dripping with false sorrow. You murdered a national hero. Thump. A jagged green peak shot across the monitor. Thump thump. The rhythm returned. Stronger. Slower. Kalen arched his back, taking a massive, shuddering breath. The gray color began to drain from his face, replaced by a flush of life. Stable, Elena breathed, slumping against the rail. Sinus rhythm. He's back. The room was silent. The nurses looked at Elena with awe. Jax let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for an hour. Secure the room, Kalen ordered, his voice weak but steady. Nobody leaves. Major, you need rest, Thorne said, trying to regain control. I will oversee your recovery personally. You, Kalen pointed a trembling finger at Thorne. You knew. I beg your pardon? The toxin, Kalen said. I didn't tell anyone I was on the Chimera protocol. It's top secret. But you gave me the exact counteragent that turns Chimera into poison. Elena looked at the 4-bag Thorne had hung earlier. She ripped it off the stand and held it up to the light. It wasn't standard saline. There was a faint blue tint to the liquid. This is compound B12, Elena said. It's harmless, unless it mixes with military-grade stimulants. Then it causes total vascular collapse, mimics a heart attack. She turned to Thorne. You weren't treating him. You were assassinating him. Thorne's facade cracked. The suave doctor vanished, replaced by a desperate, cornered rat. He tapped his smartwatch. You have no proof, Thorne sneered. And you're too late. Suddenly the lights went out. The entire hospital plunged into darkness. The hum of the ventilation system died. The electronic locks on the doors clicked open. Backup generators? Jax shouted, racking the slide of his rifle. Disabled, Thorne said, backing toward the door. This building is now a dead zone. No cell service, no internet, no cameras. And in 5 minutes, the cleaners will be here to sanitize the floor. What did you do? Elena demanded. I made a business deal, Thorne said. The people who want the major dead pay very well, and they don't leave witnesses. Thorne bolted out the door into the dark hallway. Get him, Jax yelled. No, Kalen barked, sitting up and ripping the sensors off his chest. We need to move. If the power is cut, the cleaners are already in the building. Cleaners? Elena asked. Mercenaries, Kalen said, swinging his legs off the table. He stumbled. Elena caught him. Hired to burn everything to the ground to hide the evidence, including us. They moved through the darkened corridors of the Zenith Institute. The emergency red lighting bathed the pristine white walls in the color of blood. It was Elena, Kalen, Jax, and 2 other Ghost Squad soldiers. The rest of the hospital staff had fled or were hiding in the lower levels. Roof is no-go, Jax reported, checking the stairwell. They have snipers on the adjacent buildings. Lobby is swarming with hostiles. We're trapped. The young soldier, Corporal Diaz, whispered. Not yet, Elena said. Her mind was racing. She knew this building better than the architects. She had spent months exploring the service corridors during her breaks when she worked here. The West Wing, the new MRI suite, it's under construction. So? Jax asked. So, the walls are lead-lined to block radiation, Elena explained. Thermal scopes won't see us, and it connects to the old freight elevator shaft. Lead the way, nurse, Kalen said, grabbing a pistol from Diaz's waistband. They ran, but they weren't fast enough. Glass shattered at the end of the hallway. For men in tactical gear rappelled through the windows, their weapons suppressed. Fut fut fut. Bullets chewed up the drywall inches from Elena's head. Contact front. Jax roared, opening fire. The hospital corridor turned into a war zone. The deafening roar of assault rifles echoed in the confined space. Diaz took a hit to the shoulder and went down. Elena, get Diaz, Kalen ordered, suppressing the enemy with precise shots. Elena slid across the floor, grabbing Diaz by his vest and dragging him behind a concrete pillar. She ripped open his shirt, through and through wound. Pressure, she yelled, pressing a gauze pack onto the hole. Hold this. We can't hold them, Jax yelled. They're flanking. The MRI room. Elena pointed to a heavy door 10 feet away. Go. Now. They laid down a wall of fire and retreated into the unfinished room. Jax slammed the heavy, lead-lined door and threw the deadbolt. Bullets hammered against the door, but it held. They were safe for the moment, but they were in a concrete box filled with construction equipment and a massive, unpowered MRI magnet. Kalen slid down the wall, coughing. The exertion was tearing his recovering body apart. Elena was at his side instantly. You're tearing your stitches, she scolded, checking his foresight. I've had worse, Kalen grunted. He looked at her. In the dim red light, he studied her face, the determination, the lack of fear. You're good under fire, Rossi. I was a medic in Kandahar, Major. This is just a Tuesday, she replied, tightening a bandage on his arm. Why? Kalen asked. After everything Thorn did to you, you could have stayed home. You could have let me die and watched Thorn go down for it. Elena paused. She looked at the door where the mercenaries were setting up explosive charges. Because the uniform doesn't make the soldier, Major, she said softly. And the title doesn't make the healer. I took an oath. It didn't come with an expiration date or a salary cap. Kalen smiled. It was a rare, dangerous thing. Remind me to give you a raise. Boom. The door hinges buckled. Smoke poured in. They're breaching, Jax yelled. The magnet, Elena said suddenly, looking at the massive MRI machine. Is the quench pipe installed? The what? Jax asked. The liquid helium vent, Elena shouted. If we rupture the tank, the helium expands 700 times its volume. It freezes everything and sucks the oxygen out of the room. It'll kill us too, Diaz yelled. Not if we're in the elevator shaft, Elena said, pointing to the open grate in the floor. We blow the tank, jump and seal the grate. The gas fills the room. They walk into a freezer. Crazy, Jax grinned. I like it. Fire in the hole, Kalen yelled. Jax shot the valve on the MRI machine. A hiss of escaping gas turned into a roar. Jump! They dove into the dark shaft, pulling the heavy steel hatch closed just as the door blew open. Above them, they heard the mercenaries shout, then scream, as supercooled helium flooded the room, instantly freezing their weapons and suffocating the air. They climbed down the ladder to the basement level. The boiler room. It was hot, loud, and smelled of oil, and Dr. Sterling Thorne was waiting for them. He stood on the catwalk above the boilers, holding a remote detonator. Below him, strapped to the main gas line, was enough C4 to level the city block. End of the line, Thorne screamed, his voice cracking with hysteria. I won't go to prison. I won't let you ruin me. Thorne, you're over, Kalen shouted, aiming his pistol. Drop it. If I let go. The dead man switched triggers. Thorne laughed manically. We all go. Elena stepped forward. She put her hands up. Sterling, look at you, she said, her voice calm, hypnotic. You're shaking. You're not a killer. You're a businessman. I am a visionary, Thorne shrieked. And you are a nobody, a washed-up nurse who cleans up vomit. Maybe, Elena took a step closer. But I know something you don't. What? What could you possibly know? I know that you're diabetic, Elena said. Thorne blinked. What? I saw your medical records when I worked here, type 1. And you've been sweating, shaking, and confused for the last hour. You didn't eat dinner because of the surgery, did you? Thorne's hand wavered. He licked his lips. He was dizzy. You're hypoglycemic, Sterling, Elena said softly. Your blood sugar is crashing. In about 30 seconds, you're going to pass out. And when you do, your thumb is going to slip off that button. Thorne looked at his hand. It was trembling violently. The room swam before his eyes. No, Thorne staggered. Here. Elena reached into her pocket. She pulled out a small glucose gel packet she kept for fighters. Catch. She tossed it. It was a reflex. Thorne took his hand off the detonator for a fraction of a second to catch the object flying at his face. Bang. Kalen didn't miss. The bullet struck Thorne's shoulder, spinning him around. He fell over the railing, crashing onto the metal grating below. The detonator skittered across the floor. Jax dove for it, securing the switch. Elena walked over to Thorne. He was groaning, clutching his shoulder. You shot me, Thorne wailed. He shot you, Elena corrected, kneeling down. She ripped open his expensive shirt and jammed her thumb into the wound to stop the bleeding. I'm saving you. Why? Thorne gasped, looking up at her with hatred and confusion. So you can stand trial, Elena whispered, and so I can watch them take away everything you own. Outside, sirens began to wail. Not police sirens. The heavy, low thrum of military transport vehicles. Cavalry's here, Jax said, listening to his earpiece. General Mitchell sends his regards. The building is secured. Kalen holstered his weapon. He walked over to Elena, who was efficiently bandaging the man who had tried to destroy her life. Kalen offered her a hand to help her up. You okay, Rossi? He asked. Elena stood, wiping blood, both hers and Thorne's, from her scrubs. She looked around the filthy boiler room, then at the squad of elite soldiers looking at her with total reverence. I'm fine, Major, she said, but I think I'm going to need a new set of scrubs. 3 months later, the ceremony was held at the Pentagon. It was a stuffy, formal affair. Generals, senators, and cameras. Elena stood in the back, wearing a simple blue dress. She felt uncomfortable without her boots. On the stage, General Kalen Vance, newly promoted, stood at the podium. He looked healthy, the scars on his neck fading. We talk a lot about warriors. Kalen spoke into the microphone. We pin medals on men who take lives. But today, we honor someone who refuses to let life go. He looked directly at Elena. Elena Rossi was fired for doing the right thing. She was shamed for having a conscience. And when the time came, she walked back into hell to save the people who exiled her. The room erupted in applause. Kalen beckoned her to the stage. Elena walked up. The Secretary of Defense handed her a medal, the Medal of Freedom. But Elena barely looked at it. She was looking at Dr. Sterling Thorne's mugshot on the front page of the newspaper sitting on the podium. Life sentence for conspiracy and attempted murder. After the ceremony on the steps of the Pentagon, Kalen found her. "So," he said, lighting a cigar, "I heard Apex Horizon offered you your job back. Head of trauma. Triple the salary." "They did." Elena nodded. "Are you taking it?" "I told them to shove it." Elena smiled. "Too much paperwork. Too many egos." Kalen reached into his jacket. He pulled out a thick envelope. "Well, that works out," he said, "because I have a different offer." Elena opened the envelope. It was a Department of Defense contract. Position: Chief Medical Officer, Ghost Reconnaissance Group, Civilian Contractor. Clearance: Top Secret. Authority: Absolute. Salary: blank. Fill in your own number. "We operate in the dark," Kalen said, leaning against the railing. "No red tape. No administrators telling you who you can save. You run the medical wing, I run the guns. And if anyone gets in your way, Jax throws them out a window." Elena looked at the contract. Then she looked at Kalen, the wolf who had come back from the dead to find her. "I have one condition," Elena said. "Name it." "I don't wear a uniform, and I don't salute." Kalen Vance grinned. "Deal." Elena took the pen. She signed her name. "Welcome to the team, Doc," Kalen said. Elena looked out over the city. She wasn't a victim anymore. She wasn't just a nurse. She was the one who held the line when the world fell apart. "Let's get to work," she said.